Life is so much more than a diagnosis. It's about sharing time with those you love, hanging with friends who lift you up, and experiencing all those moments that bring you joy. All hits, no skips. Learn more about Kisqali Ribociclib 200 milligrams at KISQALI.com and talk to your doctor to see if Kisqali is right for you. So long live singing to the oldies, jamming out to something new, and everything in between.
What caused the deadly fire? Was it accidental or intentional? What happened in the small town in upstate New York that has left a family already in turmoil, now in deep and utter sorrow? What happened to dearly loved and cherished pregnant 19-year-old Vanessa Milligan? What happens when love becomes fatal? This is the Fatal Attraction Podcast with Blazing Betrayal.
She was a sweet, ambitious teen with her whole life ahead of her.
She was just full of life.
She always had a smile on her face.
He was her first love.
He was a nice kid.
Very outgoing, friendly.
She was deeply in love with him.
But then their future goes up in smoke.
There was a huge explosion, and then they saw flames. My daughter was inside.
The body was so badly burned.
They didn't know if it was an accident or if it was suicide.
Or was it something far worse?
The big secret came out.
I didn't believe it when I first heard it.
Secrets would get you killed.
April 3rd, 2014. It's Thursday night in Troy, New York, an old industrial town just up the Hudson River from Albany.
Back in its heyday in the late 1800s, Troy was one of the wealthiest cities in the country.
It's fallen on hard times, unemployment, lack of industry, but it has been making a comeback.
Troy, like many northern cities, old manufacturing centers, it's declined over the years, but it's retained its Victorian charm.
But Troy's charm sometimes comes with a cost.
In older homes like these, it's not uncommon to have faulty wiring that can spark a fire.
At around 11:15 that night, a call comes in reporting a fire in one of the city's North Side mansions.
This particular house was like a big Victorian house that at some point had been carved up into several units.
There was a huge explosion. The neighbors heard the explosion, and then they saw flames.
You could tell it was bad when you came up. The sky was blazed with flames.
As firefighters arrive, worried residents gather outside, watching frantically as their home burns. But that's not all that has people panicking.
The fire seemed to have started in one particular apartment, and neighbors were pretty sure someone was still inside.
There was a lot of chaos. A lot of people yelling. There was somebody in there.
Neighbors tell firefighters that Vanessa Milligan never made it out.
Search and rescue from the Troy Fire Department went in while the building was still burning.
Desperately feeling their way through the darkness, firefighters eventually find Vanessa. But unfortunately, they're too late.
She was badly burned. There was no way that she was alive.
19-year-old Vanessa Milligan grew up especially close to her beloved grandmother, who was essentially the only mother she ever knew.
My mom helped me raise my daughter from the start, right from birth. And I was grateful for that because, I wasn't with the child's mother.
He was about 15 or 16. I think the mother was as well when they had Vanessa. So they just weren't really prepared to have a baby.
From infancy, she was there, and she was never grandma. She was Vanessa's mom, and that's the relationship that they had. My mom and my daughter were best friends. They were inseparable.
She was an amazing woman. She was just like tough and very honest, but also very caring and loving.
They were traits she passed on to her granddaughter.
She was the sweetest kid, the most beautiful girl.
She was just so kind and caring and always asking people, "How are you?"
Everything about her was beautiful, inside and out.
During her senior year of high school, Vanessa's infectious smile caught the attention of 18-year-old Gabriel Vega.
She met Gabe through one of her mutual friends, and they all kind of hung out together.
He lived right around the corner, so we would see him like every day.
My mom said that he seemed like a very nice kid. She described him as being clean cut, very mannered. She was like, when she spoke to him, it was always yes, ma'am, no, ma'am.
Although he was a year younger than Vanessa, Gabriel easily won her over.
He was cute and he was funny and very outgoing, friendly, like jokester.
Gabriel and Vanessa continued seeing one another after she graduated.
We graduated in the summer of 2012. We both started college that fall semester.
She was thinking about going to New York to be a big fashion designer.
She was gonna go far. She had that mentality and that drive.
But in January of 2014, life threw an unexpected obstacle in Vanessa's way.
One day, Vanessa and my mom went out to get a sub. And when they came back, my mom was so winded, she couldn't breathe that good. She just wanted to lay down. So I asked my mom to go to the hospital. And then she finally goes to the hospital, and then they do a test. And then they told my mom that she had like 6 months to live.
She had stage 4 lung cancer.
Vanessa's whole family was heartbroken by the news.
At that point, everybody's world came to a halt. Nobody really knew which way to turn or where to go.
Everyone but Vanessa.
Vanessa stepped up to help the woman that she truly and dearly loved.
She dropped out of school and took care of her grandmother, made her meals, and took her to her doctor's appointments.
She was gonna have to get radiation treatment and stuff like that.
However, after a hard 3-month battle, Vanessa's grandmother passed away on April 3rd, 2014.
Her grandmother died from cancer at St. Peter's Hospital in Albany.
Vanessa was crushed by her grandmother's death.
She wanted to be home. She wanted to be in her house. She didn't want any company.
I asked her to come stay with me. And she was like, "Dad, we're gonna be okay. Just come pick me up in the morning."
But he would never get the chance. By midnight, Vanessa is also dead, and the house where she'd lived with her grandmother is engulfed in flames.
In fact, the fire spread so fast that firefighters were immediately suspicious.
You don't see an intense fire like that unless it's being fueled by something.
Some sort of an accelerant had been used.
This was an intentional fire.
More secrets are revealed in this tangled web once we return with more of the Fatal Attraction podcast.
Life is so much more than a diagnosis. It's about sharing time with those you love, hanging with friends who lift you up, and experiencing all those moments that bring you joy. All hits, no skips. Learn more about Kisqali Ribociclib 200 milligrams at KISQALI.com and talk to your doctor to see if Kisqali is right for you. So long live singing to the oldies, jamming out to something new, and everything in between.
Not long after finding love with 18-year-old Gabriel Vega, Vanessa Milligan's life turned upside down.
Vanessa's beloved grandmother fell ill with terminal lung cancer.
Before she passed, my daughter was there the whole entire time. at the hospital with my mom, and she refused to leave because this was her best friend.
After her grandmother passed away, Vanessa made plans to spend the night at their apartment, grieving in private before going over to her dad's house.
But now, just hours after her grandmother's death, tragedy has struck once again.
It was like 11:30. My phone rang. I got up, I rushed over to my mother's house, and the fire department and everybody was there. And there was flames everywhere coming out of every window.
Inside the burning house, firefighters have just located Vanessa's body.
I made the decision to bring her out. We didn't want her to burn up totally.
They removed her body, but they kept quiet about it because they didn't want to excite the crowd, especially in a scene like that, because you don't know exactly how people are going to react.
I had the ambulance go to the rear of the building, because we had family members out in front of the house.
They didn't want me to see her.
It's bad as it is, but you don't want to see them bringing their loved one out.
While firefighters continue battling the blaze, Vanessa's body is transported to the morgue for an autopsy.
We had to get her out of there just because we didn't want all the evidence destroyed. We were hoping that the autopsy would show something.
Based on how the flames spread so fast, firefighters were already suspicious about the cause of the blaze.
It started at the rear of the building in the apartment where Vanessa lived with her grandmother.
We figured that this just didn't start by itself. It didn't make any sense right from the get-go.
Once the flames are finally out, investigators get to work.
The scene was taped off. People were not allowed within the apartment itself while evidence technicians were working the apartment, while fire investigators were involved in investigating the fire.
They start looking for burn signs, the way the fire develops, the trail of the fire.
The whole house had sustained massive amounts of damage from the fire.
It was immediately clear where the blaze originated.
The char patterns in the bedroom, the amount of fire in there, the bed she was in was definitely where the fire started. The mattress was totally gone. It was burnt right down to the springs.
Any accelerant had long since burned away, but the telltale signs remained.
If you've got a deep burn in a char in the wood, there was an accelerant.
In the basement, investigators also discover why none of the neighbors heard an alarm before the fire.
Investigators were able to determine that the breaker had been turned off, which prevented anything electrical from working.
They traced that, and they found out that that circuit went to the smoke alarms in Vanessa's apartment. They weren't battery-operated smoke alarms. They were hardwired.
That was something that jumped out at us.
Investigators suspected whoever set the fire might have turned off the smoke detectors intentionally.
However, there's no way to know for sure.
It might have been something they did before. It probably had gone off before when they were cooking.
While investigators search for clues, family and neighbors are gathered outside the house, unsure just what had caused the deadly blaze.
I just assumed that maybe there was a gas leak or something that caused the fire, that the house somehow exploded from the gas.
But another theory as to what started the fire soon surfaces.
Nani had just passed away that morning, so they were thinking suicide because that was her first night being alone in that house without Nani. They kind of thought maybe this could be what happened.
They kept trying to say that maybe my daughter committed suicide.
More secrets are revealed in this tangled web once we return with more of the Fatal Attraction podcast.
Life is so much more than a diagnosis. It's about sharing time with those you love, hanging with friends who lift you up, and experiencing all those moments that bring you joy. All hits, no skips. Learn more about Kisqali Ribociclib 200 milligrams at KISQALI.com and talk to your doctor to see if Kisqali is right for you. So long live singing to the oldies, jamming out to something new, and everything in between.
When 19-year-old Vanessa Milligan died in a fire just hours after her grandmother succumbed to lung cancer, rumors began to swirl that she could have taken her own life out of her grief.
Everybody just kept saying, maybe she was depressed. Maybe she didn't want to live anymore. Maybe she just wanted to go be with her grandmother, which is my mom, who helped me raise her.
But when detectives approach Vanessa's father, he quickly shuts down that theory.
There's no way this is a suicide.
My daughter was like 8 months pregnant at the time.
She was pregnant?
Yes.
My daughter would never hurt anybody, especially her own child.
It couldn't possibly. And never in a million years.
I didn't find out that she was pregnant until she was already 6 months pregnant. It was hidden from me for a while.
Inevitably, she was going to get big enough to where she couldn't hide the big secret anymore. So eventually, the big secret came out.
I was shocked. Kids wasn't something that she wanted to have right away.
We were both just starting college. We had this whole plan that we were going to go to college and get a good career. It was a huge shock.
However, despite the upset to her plans, Vanessa's father says she had been determined to have the baby.
The way she was raised is you be responsible.
At that point, her main focus was just being mom, being the best mom. She was just beside herself, excited.
But if it wasn't suicide, detectives hope Vanessa's dad can give them a lead on who might have wanted to harm his daughter.
He lost his mom, his daughter, and granddaughter. Think of that. That's a horrible thing. It's horrible enough to see one family member die from cancer, but then to lose your daughter and her unborn baby as well. Vanessa Milligan being pregnant was just heart-wrenching, but also inspires the detectives to work that much harder.
Do you know who the father is?
She was seeing some guy named Gabriel Vega.
It took some time for her to actually come out and say that Gabriel was the father of her baby.
When I asked my daughter, hey, who's the child's father? Am I gonna be able to meet him? And she didn't want to talk about it.
She kept it a secret for a while. She was trying to, protect him for whatever reason.
Our family can be old-fashioned, the older ones, and you're not supposed to have a baby out of wedlock.
Did you and Vanessa fight about her being pregnant?
I hate to admit it, but yeah.
I told him, I said, when I asked my daughter who she was pregnant by, as I'm talking to her, I'm kind of following her around the house, trying to talk to her. And she walked in her room as I'm like, daughter, you gotta tell me who your kid's father is. I'm your dad, I should know. And she shut the door in my face. And I don't know if she meant to do it, because it wasn't like she was facing me and slammed the door. It was like she just kind of shut it behind her. And I got mad and I punched the door.
Wait a minute. You don't think that I had anything?
No, not at all. We're just trying to gather information.
Naturally, everybody's a suspect. So when they asked me, did I have any altercations, I brung that up right away because I don't want them following misleads.
He would harm himself before he would harm Vanessa.
When detectives turned to the neighbors who had fled the burning building, they offer up another lead.
Once we got the fire under control, we started interviewing witnesses as best we could.
A witness looked out the window and saw somebody running from Vanessa's building.
We had him running from the scene prior to the explosion.
Could the mystery man be their arsonist?
The witnesses on the scene weren't able to identify him.
All they could say for certain was that the person was wearing a red backpack.
The next morning, while the medical examiner works to salvage any evidence from Vanessa's body, detectives bring in her boyfriend and suspected father of her unborn child, 18-year-old Gabriel Vega.
He was likely the father of Vanessa's now deceased child, so we wanted to interview him.
It's just awful what happened.
And the baby was yours?
That's what she told me.
He seemed to not know whether he was the father of the child or not.
We were kind of on and off.
When the cops asked him what he had been doing the night of Vanessa's death, he said, I was smoking pot, getting high, and playing Xbox.
He claimed he was home at his house, which was probably 5 or 6 blocks away.
And Gabriel is adamant that he had nothing to do with Vanessa's death.
He said, I had nothing to do with anything. I hadn't seen her.
Do you know anyone that might want to hurt Vanessa?
Well, her dad wasn't too happy about the baby.
He said that Nathan and Vanessa were at each other's throats.
Yeah, we've heard that. Anyone else?
At that point, Gabe said something pretty surprising.
I actually have another girlfriend.
Her name is Amy Russo.
According to Gabe, he and Amy had also been on and off over the past few years, and he actually had a child with her as well.
Gabe told detectives that him and Amy decided to stay together and really have a go at being a family.
She was pretty mad.
But it's what Gabriel tells them next that brings Amy to the top of their suspect list.
The day Vanessa died in the fire, she had found out that Vanessa was pregnant.
Was it possible this revelation had made Amy angry enough to confront Vanessa? Or maybe even to kill her?
More secrets are revealed in this tangled web once we return with more of the Fatal Attraction Podcast.
Life is so much more than a diagnosis. It's about sharing time with those you love, hanging with friends who lift you up, and experiencing all those moments that bring you joy. All hits, no skips. Learn more about Kisqali Ribociclib 200 milligrams at KISQALI.com and talk to your doctor to see if Kisqali is right for you. So long live singing to the oldies, jamming out to something new, and everything in between.
Detectives investigating the murder of 19-year-old Vanessa Milligan and her unborn child have just learned that her on and off boyfriend, Gabriel Vega, also has a child with another woman.
Gabe told detectives that his relationship with 19-year-old Amy Russo had also been on and off, but recently it had been very much on again.
And then there was still Vanessa Milligan, who was carrying his unborn daughter, which obviously shows that they'd had a relationship.
Could detectives be dealing with a love triangle?
According to Gabe, Amy just found out about Vanessa's pregnancy, and the fire that killed her broke out only hours later.
Jealousy seemed to be the emerging motive. Her boyfriend had impregnated another woman. She didn't like that.
Do you think Amy set the fire?
I don't know. She was pretty mad.
After Amy found out that Vanessa was pregnant, she made some threats over text message.
Had she followed up on those threats? Detectives figure it's time they talk to Amy. But first, they hope to settle something else once and for all.
Do you mind if we do a DNA swab?
We just asked him if he'd be willing to consent to a DNA swab to determine who the father of the child was.
Once Gabriel consents, detectives collect the sample to send to the lab.
They got Vanessa's body out of the fire in time to hopefully salvage some evidence, including the baby's DNA.
Then, once they have Gabriel's DNA, detectives bring in Amy Russo for questioning.
Right away, Amy admitted that she sent texts to Vanessa the day of the fire, but she denies they were threatening.
I just told her, stay away from Gabe, Just because you're having his baby doesn't mean he's with you.
But Amy tells the detectives that Vanessa's reply confused her.
She said, no, I'm not pregnant by him. I'm pregnant by somebody else.
I didn't really believe her, though.
Do you think Gabe's the father?
He said he didn't know. I told him he better quit messing with her, though.
However, while she admits to being angry about Vanessa's pregnancy, Amy denies having anything to do with her rival's death.
Okay, so where exactly were you on Thursday night?
I was hanging at a friend's house.
With a thin alibi, detectives let Amy go. Then follow up with her friend, who confirms what Amy had already told them.
It was possible her friend was covering for her, but for now at least, they didn't have any proof that Amy was involved in setting the fire.
However, detectives are no longer looking for an arsonist. When they get the results of Vanessa's autopsy, the findings indicate they are hunting a murderer.
There were no traces of soot or smoke inside Vanessa's lungs.
If you don't find soot in the lungs, you can tell that the person wasn't breathing when the fire started.
She had a petechiae in her eyes, which is the bursting of blood vessels that occurs when someone is choked.
She was strangled, and then the fire was set to cover up her death.
While the fire didn't conceal Vanessa's cause of death, it did cover up other crucial evidence.
We took fingernail scrapings to find any forensic evidence that was on her.
In strangling cases, the victims often struggle with the killers, leaving traces of the killer's DNA under their fingernails.
But we found no evidence of that.
In a fire like that, a lot of the evidence can be destroyed.
However, there is some evidence the fire didn't destroy.
The vaginal swab came back with the presence of semen. So we needed to determine who that sperm belonged to.
While the sample goes to the lab for analysis, Vanessa's family joins in the effort to pinpoint her killer.
I was on social media trying to solve the case myself, because going to police throughout my whole life is something that you just don't do. You have a problem, the first thing you do is you call around to everybody in the streets, because the streets will tell you what you want to know.
There are lots of theories floating around.
They kept saying, oh, Gabe did it. This was the initial things in the street.
There was mention at times of somebody else being involved. This woman named Amy.
It was never strong enough to be, say, reported in the press, but she and another unnamed woman, there were stories that they had gone to the apartment and set it on fire. That was what the gossip was that was floating around at the time.
Maybe the other unnamed woman was the same friend who provided Amy with an alibi.
It's not uncommon for friends to lie for each other when they're trying to cover up a crime.
The following morning, when results come back from the lab, detectives learn that Amy may have had an additional motive to kill Vanessa, beyond the fact that she might be carrying Gabriel's baby.
We were able to compare the DNA he provided us with the DNA in the form of seminal fluid and sperm from Vanessa's body, and it was a match.
He had sex with my daughter that day.
Gabe had told us at the first interview he had not seen Vanessa in a fairly long period of time. So at this point, we had him in a lie.
The DNA analysis also confirmed that Gabe was the father of Vanessa's baby.
But did that mean Gabriel was her killer?
We could only prove he had sex with her and lied about it. That's not evidence of a murder. A lot of people lie about having sex.
Detectives also can't rule out the possibility that Amy found out what Gabriel had been up to and had done something about it.
She was very jealous. She was described as vindictive and angry.
Detectives now had two different suspects with motive, but no way of knowing just which one was Vanessa's killer.
Until, more than a week after Vanessa's murder, Amy unexpectedly comes back to the police station.
She heads down to 55 State Street to the police headquarters and talks to the cops.
This time, Amy was hysterical. She told detectives she had just had a fight with Gabe.
He was trying to strangle me.
She was afraid for her life. He was choking her and said, I will kill you just like I killed Vanessa.
More secrets are revealed in this tangled web once we return with more of the Fatal Attraction Podcast.
Amy Russo has just come to detectives in Troy, New York, with potentially explosive information about her boyfriend, 18-year-old Gabriel Vega.
Gabe and Amy were both possible suspects in the murder of 19-year-old Vanessa Milligan, who was pregnant with Gabe's child.
Gabe knew that we were investigating him at that point. He knew at that point he was more than a person of interest.
Detectives were also considering whether Amy could have been involved in the murder, since she had just found out about Gabe's involvement with Vanessa and her pregnancy that same day.
Amy might have considered Gabe and Vanessa's relationship cheating, which could have given her a motive to get rid of her rival.
Both had initially denied any involvement, but now Amy claims that Gabriel had killed Vanessa.
Amy said she'd confronted Gabe that day about the rumors swirling around about her possible involvement in the murder, and that he'd threatened her and tried to choke her.
He told me he'd do me like he done Vanessa.
Amy says she'd barely escaped with her life.
At that moment when he was choking her, her grandmother and her mom came home. So immediately he let her go.
And Amy and her mom had gone right to the police.
She knew that he was serious, that he would do it, just like he did Vanessa.
He told me he did it too.
When he threatened you?
No, before then.
Amy admitted that the morning after the fire, Gabe had told her what he'd done.
He told me he'd went behind the shed of his house, filled up a 2-liter soda bottle with gas, and taken it to Vanessa's.
So why didn't you tell us this before?
He said he would kill me.
Now the question detectives have to answer is whether or not Amy is telling the truth.
It was possible she was really scared for her life, or she could have just been pointing the finger at Gabe to divert suspicion from herself.
Everybody in the street was putting her name out there of being the killer.
Even if it's true, Amy's story isn't enough to charge Gabriel with murder. But it is enough to get a search warrant.
We conducted a search warrant on his residence, looking for evidence to connect him to the scene.
What they find appears to corroborate both Amy's and the eyewitnesses' accounts.
Ultimately, what was recovered was a red string backpack and 5 to 7 gas cans in the shed and outside the residence.
One witness at the scene told detectives they saw someone running away after the fire started, wearing a red backpack.
They also knew an accelerant was used to start the fire, so the gas cans were consistent with the crime scene and Amy's version of the events.
However, detectives still don't have enough to make an arrest.
We did not have the smoking gun. We found things that were consistent, but could not say he was the one who had done it.
It can take a long time or a short time to solve a homicide. It can take years.
By the end of the summer, it has been almost 6 months since the murder, with still no suspect in custody.
That was the most difficult part, feeling like nothing's being done, especially when you feel like you know who did it.
But just as everyone begins to fear an arrest will never be made, the evidence detectives need all but falls into their laps.
Detectives got a visit from a woman who said she had important information about the murder.
She was driving past the apartment where Vanessa was murdered as the fire was beginning.
The witness says that as she passed Vanessa's house, a young man ran across the street, right in front of her car.
She said she had to slam on the brakes to keep from running him over.
He stopped in front of her car and either put his hands on the hood of her car or put his hands up like this, like bracing for impact.
I'm so sorry, are you okay?
She got a clear view of his face.
She described him as a young Hispanic male.
But was it Gabriel?
Okay, we're gonna show you a photo lineup, and you let me know if this is the guy you may have seen.
Okay.
Okay?
After looking at a 6-pack of photos or a photo array, she positively identified Gabriel Vega as the person that she almost ran over.
This lineup.
It was him.
It's the break detectives have been waiting for. But is it too good to be true?
This information was being provided very late in the investigation. It was coming at a time when people on the street believed Gabe Vega to be the assailant, at a time when members of the Troy City Council had been offering rewards for information leading to the arrest of the person responsible. Did she come forward for the reward? Was there a connection to the Milligan family? It was problematic.
We really appreciate it. The officer will see you out.
However, once they've properly vetted their witness, prosecutors decide to present the case to the grand jury.
The grand jury decided, after listening to all the evidence, to charge Mr. Vega with murder.
Almost 6 months after Vanessa's murder, detectives finally have an indictment and an arrest warrant for Gabriel Vega.
They've been tracking him, following him, tailing him for the last 6 months.
It felt good to finally be able to move on it.
However, there's just one problem.
Finally, they get a warrant for him, and now they can't find him.
It was like he disappeared into thin air.
More secrets are revealed in this tangled web once we return with more of the Fatal Attraction podcast.
After 6 months of building a case against him, detectives in Troy, New York finally have a warrant to arrest 18-year-old Gabriel Vega for the murder of his pregnant girlfriend, Vanessa Milligan. But now they face a new challenge.
Gabe had dropped off the grid and police were unable to locate him.
Detectives were looking for him and trying to locate Mr. Vega. But almost universally, they rely upon tracking people through their phones.
But his phone was always off. So there were a number of people that would just randomly call this number and hope that it was on so they could get a ping on his location.
On October 22nd, after almost a week of trying to locate Gabriel, the detectives' persistence finally pays off.
His phone happened to be on, and they managed to get his location.
Detectives track Gabriel to a house in Albany, 10 miles south of Troy.
They went there, he come walking out the door, and that's when the FBI was already in the parking lot waiting for him.
Mr. Vega was arrested and he was taken into custody.
I was the first one they called and said, "We got him. I just want you to know we got him. Just meet me at the station. I want you to see him. I want you to see for your own eyes that we got him." And they did.
On May 18th, 2016, 2 years after the fire that gutted Vanessa's apartment, Gabriel goes on trial for second-degree murder and arson.
First-degree murder is rare. Second-degree murder is common. In this case, you needed an underlying crime. And burglary, coming in, they knew from the evidence that he had been let in by Vanessa. Vanessa had opened the door and welcomed Gabe in. Remember, this was a man that, according to relatives and friends, she still loved. And he came to the door. She didn't know why. She let him in. So there was no burglary. As a result, no first-degree murder.
We had to have some conversations with the Milligan family that were not fun conversations. They were concerned, they were angry, I'm sure, about it. But we brought them in and advised them that, like us, we have a job to do and we have to follow the evidence where it is and make sure everything happened in accordance with the law.
There was not going to be a charge for the death of Vanessa's child either. There was no law in New York State to say that an unborn child counts as a death.
That was a very big thing that we were upset about and bothered us.
When the trial gets underway, prosecutors rely on Amy Russo's testimony to lay out how events unfolded on the evening of April 3rd, 2014.
April 3rd, that day is a horrible day for Vanessa. She's lost her grandmother. She didn't know how horrible it was going to become when Gabe Vega showed up at the door. His girlfriend, the mother of his daughter, had found out that day about Vanessa being pregnant with his child.
She obviously was very pissed off about it.
According to Amy's testimony, she insisted that Gabe go over and end things with Vanessa, but never wanted him to kill her.
Prosecutors say that a few hours later, Gabriel paid a visit to Vanessa under the guise of checking on her.
Your grandmother died earlier that morning.
It was her first night alone. She was upset, grieving.
But prosecutors also say Gabriel did more than just console a grieving Vanessa.
We could prove he had sex with her.
Prosecutors assert that when they were done, Gabriel began his plan to get rid of Vanessa by instigating an argument.
Everybody knows what you had going on, yo.
You're crazy. You're insane. You know what? I'm not this baby with or without you, okay?
Mr. Vega went over there, ultimately strangling Vanessa, killing her and their unborn child.
It takes a lot of emotion to strangle someone because you're looking at them face to face.
To me, it just shows no remorse. This is your own child, Gabe, that you killed. You killed your own child, along with my child.
Then, once he was sure Vanessa was dead, prosecutors say Gabriel attempted to cover up his crime.
She had been doused with gasoline and set on fire.
His hope was that the body would be so badly burned that it wouldn't be possible to tell if she was alive when the fire started. He was hoping everything would burn up.
When it's the defense's turn, Gabriel's attorneys focus on his other girlfriend's testimony.
They attacked the credibility of Miss Russo.
They were attempting to portray it as that she was lying about what Gabe had done.
The defense said that Gabe, at Amy's urging, had only intended to break things off with Vanessa and had no intention of killing her.
But Gabe's attorney claimed that when he tried to break up with her, she got mad, things became heated, and got out of hand.
Mr. Vega's attorney asked for the lesser included offense of manslaughter in the first degree, saying that Mr. Vega did not intend to cause Miss Milligan's death.
But will those claims resonate with the jury?
After many days of deliberating, they did convict him of manslaughter.
The family was disappointed. They wanted the murder conviction.
I don't feel justice was done. Justice would be bringing back my daughter.
Instead, Gabriel is going to prison, but will eventually see the light of day again.
He's only going to do 34 years, and he'll be free. He went in as a young man, so he's going to get out in his 50s.
He should never have the opportunity to get out.
It just didn't seem like it was a harsh enough punishment.
Meanwhile, Vanessa's family continues to mourn this bright light extinguished far too soon.
She was beautiful, talented, smart. She had a future. She had everything going for her.
Her laugh was just infectious. She was just a beautiful person, she just radiated beauty. There's a lot of joy missing from my life now.
Life without her, it's depressing because it's like losing your best friend.
I still can't make any sense of it. I always believed that there was a reason for everything, but there isn't one for this.
It's astonishing how much chaos a person can cause with lies, deceit, and eventual murder. Thanks to a witness, the detectives finally obtained the information they had been searching for to solve Vanessa Milligan's murder. Vanessa Milligan was the sunshine in her beloved grandmother's life. Her love and legacy will live on forever in the lives of family and friends. Coming up on the next episode of the Fatal Attraction Podcast.
She was a hardworking single mom who'd found happiness with a new man.
She has found the love of her life. They was about to get married. She was trying to have another baby.
Until it all came to a screeching halt.
We received a phone call saying that there was a hit and run. A female was struck by a vehicle.
He just told me the mom didn't make it. I cried for about a month straight, every single day.
The close-knit community of Yonkers, New York is reeling in shock and fear after a shocking crime. The devastating nature of this crime leaves many questioning whether it was a tragic accident or a deliberate act. What happened to Glennis Pinto? Tune in to the next episode of the Fatal Attraction Podcast. We will see you in the next episode.